This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world.
We're back.
Yeah.
I think everybody's kind of probably getting the gist of the agenda, unless you want me to revisit that real quick.
You know what? Let's just keep it infrastructure for now.
All right. So Michael and I have kind of put an agenda together that we've been deploying through our podcasts over the last couple months, probably now, Michael. We've been doing this.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Really what it breaks down is to cover a structure so keeps us accountable to cover kind of the same topics and keep you updated on what's new in our businesses. We start off first with general feelings of the week. It's an emotional roller coaster as an entrepreneur, so we're sharing what it's like this week and how we're feeling this week. Number 2 is sales and marketing. What are we doing to get in front of more leads? What are we doing to keep our existing customers engaged? How are we getting in front of those different pipelines? Engineering and R&D. What's new for product development? Exciting for creation in our businesses, or just in general engineering for the projects that we have in the pipeline. Company-wide updates, improvements. This is where we're going to talk about stuff that's going on in the floor, organization to communication. And then number 5 is what have we been Googling this week? And lastly is something personal about us so you can learn a little bit more about Matt and Michael.
Yep. Should I start with general feelings?
Sure. Sounds good to me.
Cool. Last week, I think I've been a little bit nervous because it's been a little bit since we've closed a major turnkey. And of course, our business is much more based on closing these kind of 20 to, $60,000, $70,000 deals than I think yours is. So we got to keep the flow going. But I've been kind of nervous about that, and now I think we're going to have probably the opposite problem again. And I think this is a tale as old as the podcast of going from Michael being nervous about cash flow to now being a little bit nervous about being able to execute on the timeline, because you close 3 of these deals and then all of a sudden it can be too much on an 8-person job. So a little bit of cash flow stress now going into execution stress. And I also had a little bit of a drama with one of our vendors on our last consulting project that we still are on, which I think has kind of opened my eyes, because in a way of seeing what they did wrong to see what we could do better, right? Because there are little things that they've sucked at, big things that they've sucked at, but that are kind of reflections of what I think we can take away from and do better ourselves to better serve our own clients.
I think that's really good to be reflective on it that way. It's easy to just pass the blame, but how do we just grow from the pain?
Yeah. Well, that vendor just like straight up violated their NDA, and there were a whole bunch of issues. But
beautiful.
It all started out with their statement of accounts being messy and these little things here and there, and that kind of triggered me to think, hey, we can move doing statements for our customers that have a big spend from every 30 days to every 2 weeks, and add like upcoming charges so there's no surprises and little improvements out of a bad situation. Yeah. How about you?
Mine has been, we talk about that ADHD that we both kind of share in. Mine has been pretty strong this last week. I think it's just a lot of things been compounding that I've cleared off my plate since the beginning of the year and kind of end of last year. Really some objectives that I wanted to get done, or goals that I had set for myself because of the little one on the way that I wanted off my plate. But now I've created a little bit of extra time on, which is good and or bad, if you will. So it's been more or less saying no to a lot of things that I want to chase just because shiny object syndrome, and saying, Matt, just stick within the HubSpot and continue to hit the sales, because if I continue to stay focused on that, that'll be the best thing for our business.
Yep. Like what kind of shiny objects?
From product development, there's things that we want to create as a business for products that we decided aren't going to be done this year. That I was like, if I did this because I have some free time, is what I was kind of racking my head around. We could technically do it this year, and it's like, no, that's not the right thing to do, Matt.
Yeah.
Stick to the plan. Like, if I expect my team members to follow the plan that we're setting for each other, I should hold my own self accountable to that too. So it's more or less that.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
Should we go to sales and marketing, where we always get stuck in a loop?
That's probably a perfect transition for me, because that's every time I had that shiny object syndrome, it was, all right, back into HubSpot. We're going to knock out XYZ for following up with leads, which has been just awesome this last couple of weeks here. Just the amount of engagement. And then something I wanted to bring up is we finally got our drip campaigns working.
Hmm.
And I was curious to see what you see for open rate and click through rate on your drip campaigns.
Off the top of my head, like 25 and 2%.
Okay. So we ran our first run.
Mhm.
Our marketing agency said that the open was 13. They said that that's low for a
Yep.
new one, but then our click through rate was almost 4%.
Yep.
Which they're like, that's actually quite higher than we were expecting for having never ran a drip campaign with these leads.
Yep.
So I was just curious for a benchmark. I wasn't sure what to expect.
Yeah, they've always been more or less the same for us in terms of, but we also haven't been super consistent on email marketing.
Yeah. And now we've got so before we started doing email marketing, something that we've been really bad at on like social media is we didn't start with like a plan. We just started doing stuff like, oh, we'll figure it out. This one, we built out a cadence. We have the next month already scheduled and booked. So they're going out automated. And then this coming week, we're starting to lay out what's happening for next month. So we're
Yep.
already 3 weeks ahead, if you will, in the buffer.
Yeah, that's definitely where you want to be. How long and detailed are they? Are they like written? Are they like reports, or are they like product sales? Like, I'm curious what's in your drip campaigns.
Yeah, it's varying depending upon which one we're in or vertical. So product ones are going to be a little bit more obviously product focused on what we're doing. But at the end of the day, the main focus for our sales, if you will, we view it as education with our customers. So the way we view sales is how do we continue to educate our customers that are new to automation, new to using our type of products. So then when they decide to finally buy, we're kind of top of mind. It's a little bit longer play, but that's just what's worked really well for us in the past. So that's the way we're looking at marketing is what's new about robots? What do people need to know? It's been some people don't know what the difference between a robot and a cobot is.
Mhm.
So going down some of those steps, what's the difference between brands of robots? Things like that. What grants are available within the
Right.
state of Wisconsin for automation? There's a lot of really cool things that legislation's doing to support manufacturers, or especially small business and manufacturers that really can't justify it if they just look at their P&L
Mhm.
and buy automation. So there's a lot of really cool grants out there that people can go get. So we create awareness around things
Yeah,
like that.
that's one thing that I've actually been really looking into is, we had one customer who, shout out to Lone Wolf Precision on Instagram, but he got a grant for, adding in a loading system into his machine, and that kind of made me aware of, hey, what grants can we get, especially in like developing the actual R&D on the products. I think there's a lot more bandwidth to for and grant money available. But yeah, kind of a two-pronged thing I'm looking at, one for our customers of getting grants to pay for 50 to 70% of an install, but secondarily for us, if we can get 50% of a R&D project covered, it might be a considerable acceleration.
Yeah, I've never had great luck with going after the R&D like that. It's been more or less the operations and infrastructure ones. Like
Yeah.
we got the grant for the Doosan BVM that we have on the way. We've gotten grants like when we moved facilities, stuff like that. Like that's where we've seen it. So I don't know how
Right.
California's ran. Wisconsin's very conservative, if you will, slow to spend money, if you will.
Yeah.
Where I think California is probably far more aggressive. So you might
Mhm.
have a lot of opportunities in the R&D that I'm just not getting here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's something I'm just starting to look into as well. I don't really care where the money comes from. I care at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If we offset 50% of a machine, we can still pour that 50% into something else.
I think from past experience chasing that and or DoD, just be careful because they can be huge time sinks
Yeah.
with little return on the back end. Like we have the family farm. I've done a lot of grants for that. I can tell you, like the only way that those grants make any sense is because Matt's time was free to do them.
Yeah. Okay.
Like some of the grants we've got for manufacturing for the BVM, that one made sense. That was all right. I put probably 10 hours into the paperwork and working with an auditor, and then there'll probably be another 5 to 10 at the end of it. But that totally made sense. I just watch your time sync. You might be better off with R&D
feedback there.
credits.
So sales and marketing mostly in HubSpot, focusing on the drip campaigns.
That's it. Lots of calls and emails.
Yeah.
That's been my week. And then the other one being we're looking at launching an automation assessment product page on our website.
Yep.
So making it so people can see what that service is, what it costs. They could technically buy it. We don't think they're going to be a big buy now on our website,
Right.
but it's it's pivoting it to make it another view. We're going to keep the automation assessment as a service page, but we're also going to turn it into a product to see if we get a better conversion rate.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. What about yourself?
You're really cough drop.
Bad timing.
It's okay. There's been a lot of sales and marketing. Whenever I think I need to be a lot more disciplined and, eventually kind of pull myself out of some of these admin roles, which I've been working on, but to varying degrees of success. And I think I'm a lot, kind of responsible of this undulation of execution and cash flow. So that's one thing I've been focused on. And part of that discipline is being, more disciplined about following up with leads, getting myself involved. Our sales guy, Gary, is great, but there's only so many, he'll hit a technical snag or, maybe he understands all the products, but then, we might get into, one of these installs has like a custom PLC on top of it to do, some process I can't talk about, but that's kind of where, Gary hits his limits. So I've been trying to be a lot more disciplined about strategically inserting myself into sales to kind of try to bump our close rate. I think that's really thing number one. Thing number two, did you see that ad that we've been running of the like blurred out, sensitive content thing with the?
I don't think I've been served that one yet. I've
Okay.
actually been, I
Yeah.
guess that could be a little bit of a personal thing. I've been driving down how much time I spend on social
Okay.
drastically over the last couple weeks here.
Yeah, and mine's been going up as I've been trying to play the engagement game. But one thing we have this ad that is basically like kind of a mock-up of the sensitive content thing that shows up when there's like a reel where someone like dies.
Okay, I figured it was you running
Yeah.
across the shop with a black bar
No.
across your chest or something.
And it's like parts being automated instead of see sensitive content. It says see why your parts aren't being made automatically. And we have been seeing like a cost per click of 1 cent on that ad, which is the lowest I've ever seen.
That is
Um,
insane.
We got an extra 9,000 unique visitors per week, and I
To
kind of
your
came to the
social or
conclusion
to your
to our website.
to your website?
And I've kind of come to the conclusion that all of those leads are garbage. I think it's
They're
really
bots.
just I think what's happening is the algorithm is seeing that people click on it thinking it's sensitive content, right? Or thinking it's like see real. Then it takes them to the website, and I think the algorithm has just realized anybody will click on this because they just want to see like what's behind the blur,
Yeah,
and
what's
there's a
behind?
trick. And because what happened is I started going and looking at who this ad was being served to. I'd go look at people who liked it or interacted with it, and they're all just garbage pages. It's all people who aren't engaging on the platform, who have 10 followers. And I realized, okay, I need to really nail down to serve our advertising to the right people. So
That
that
gets
kinda-
expensive then. That's more than a penny.
Yeah, more than a penny. And normally we're used to seeing 25 cents or something.
Yeah.
But that kind of led to me investigating our broader, specifically with Meta advertising. And I think that's kind of a theme that people who have listened to the podcast for a long time have probably seen my push and pull with, where it feels like with Meta, we're either making, a ton of money or we're just burning a ton of money. And I've kind of realized that they'll just randomly change the algorithm, and then I'll get really excited, I'll put money into it, and then kind of a month later I'll see that they change the algorithm again, and I'm kind of lagging behind whatever they're doing.
The worst part is it's addicting. Like I
Yeah.
know when we've ran ads in the past and I've gone down that rabbit hole and it's like, oh, this is working, and then like
Mhm.
you get addicted to that flywheel, and then like you said, they change the recipe a little bit, and so now you've got to find your new setup, if you will, and it's just
Yeah.
it's a rat race.
And it's not just a little bit. They've taken away how you target audiences, and they're trying to push a lot more of their kind of BS AI tools. And the reality is whatever changes they made in kind of late January, February have really messed up our advertising. And now I'm back in the boat that I was 3 or 4 months ago of saying, do I need to pull back from Meta and put this money somewhere else? So that was its own investigation.
Yeah.
And kind of leading off of that, I started to play the LinkedIn, Instagram kind of organic engagement game of, okay, we're gonna do 1 post a day, we're gonna do 10 stories a day, we're gonna do those things instead, because our Facebook Meta advertising just isn't converting the same.
I think that's a solid play. That's what Develop's been doing for the last several years. We've been betting long on web dev and educational content there. It's a long play, but I don't know. I like tangible, and I
Hmm.
see what I get there. I see me burning cash when I throw it into ads. So our ad budget is
Yeah.
considerably different than trade show and web dev.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's hard because there's always the risk of burning cash with marketing. It's just how it is.
Yeah,
And the so yeah, I'm trying to figure out where to put our marketing dollars. I think we've been looking at sponsoring some other podcasts and pursuing some more maybe targeted methods. There, I think there's platforms that like Modern Machine Shop and Practical Machinist that
I was just gonna
yeah,
ask, have you looked at paying? I know we talked about that a while back. I wasn't sure if you dug into those further because they're not cheap.
right,
I don't know anybody that's done them that is like willing to give their feedback or give solid data to it. Like I've talked to people that
right.
have done it. They're like, yeah, it was great. We got a bunch of good calls, but it's like, what did that turn into? Was it your friends calling you or was it
Hmm.
customers?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's part of the problem with marketing in general too. Is where's the issue, right? Because anything that you do, you're just getting top of funnel results. You're getting people to click on a page. How good is that page? How good is your product? Is your product, does it have product market fit? Is it at the right price point? Are you targeting the right shop? And that's kind of the question of, all of those things interplay. And I think that's why at the end of the day, like, you're going to burn cash with marketing. It's just making sure you're not burning too much. So I think that's something I need to pursue and kind of, I think I need to really start looking at it again and start placing $3, $4, $5,000 bets just to see if stuff works.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Sometimes bigger bets are better than a bunch of small bets, death by a bunch of little cuts, or do you want to just go for the
well,
strategic
I'm
play?
talking like one at a time, right? Of like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
No, I'm saying just the way the ads are,
yeah.
but yeah, spend more on one good thing
Well, the problem is you
versus
don't know if
trying
it's
to
good.
get it with the
All
ad.
of these services will tell you like, oh, we get ROAS of
Yeah.
7x, and well, a bunch of just BS because they're marketers, and that's fine. Um,
But do they come with something tangible? Like, do they come with backlinks to your website? Do you get an evergreen page with that when you go to Modern Machine Shop?
That's the
That's
thing is,
always going to
everyone will
be,
give you something tangible like that. And the question is it worth it? I can get a good domain authority score backlink for $100. Is it that I want to be spending 50 grand with a company like Modern Machine Shop or Practical Machinist? Um,
oh,
no,
that's what it
no, I'm
costs
just throwing
now?
out numbers.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
like, holy buckets. I should have bought that years ago when I looked at the numbers. I was like,
Hmm.
10x now.
But all these things are like 4 or 5 grand just to start, just to try something and see if it
Yes.
works. So I want to start placing those bets, and trying to get a lot more targeted. Something that's always been in the back of my mind is how much we should pursue something like Zoom Info or another tool to really try to get to our customers. But at the same time, I've always been skeptical of just like cold emailing somebody who has no idea who the hell we are. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So that's the challenge. Yeah, I think I got to start placing more bets and probably start planning out a little more in advance on the trade show front. Yeah.
Sounds fun. What are you planning for trade shows? I
Oh
got to ask
well,
that
so
one.
I'm still debating like whether we do West Tech or not. There's still room.
Okay.
The kind of where I landed from IMTS is, and I don't know, but at least what I was seeing is that the people with demos that were running robots or automation on an actual machine tool, not a mock-up, not something that showed how it worked, but an actual tool that could make actual chips. They seemed to have a lot better engagement in the booths, and it seemed like it was definitely worth the money to deal with it, get the machine in there, and so on.
When I walked the show, if it had a cardboard demo, I
Yeah.
didn't walk in. Like, I don't know why I just wasn't engaged. Like, it's a piece of cardboard and it's a cobot spinning around. I see those on our
Mhm.
floor all the time. Like, I don't need to go look at this.
Yeah.
And they might have had a great product. It was just a perception that I probably just needed
It's
to
like
get
every
over. But I'd
FANUC
assume,
integrator. They got like 10 of those stupid little FANUC cobots spinning a sign, and you just start zoning it out at a point.
yeah, it's
But yeah,
exactly.
my thought process is like, okay, well, if we're gonna do West Tech, we need to figure out a way to get our UMC there. We want to do like a live demo of the intro load, and then I start doing the math. And I think the hard part for me is that I just want to get to consistency in terms of our revenue trajectory, our growth trajectory, our execution trajectory. Because right now it's hard to plan. Because we're having
Oh, it's
yeah,
terrible. Yeah, it's hard to plan
yeah,
at this
it's
size.
hard, and it's especially hard to plan with these kind of short medium term projects that are well
Yeah, you have a
Yeah, they're
different
well
opinion.
into the 5-figure range, but they're not into the 6-figure range. They're not these, multi-month processes. And, we kind of have, I think I need to really smooth things out, maybe probably push our lead times out a little bit, and figure out how to Gantt all these things out for kind of consistent growth in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're looking at that right. We've seen a lot of value in that, and it's not just for our customers, it's communication with our team, because as the work continues to come in, there's always this goal of wanting to get stuff done as quickly as possible, or this almost feeling like, now that I have this new task list, I got to get it done this week. And so it's like telling the team, no, that this stuff came in. We're letting you know that it's coming. That's the real goal. It's going onto the Gantt.
Right.
That is future work. You need to focus on executing this week, which we are not going to change on you. Because that's something we went through of like, all right, we have fire drills and stuff like that. It's how do you plan that stuff for next week and just get more strategic about keeping the team on
Right.
what
Yeah.
was planned for the week. And we get so much more done by doing that rather than trying to solve something that might not even be a
Yeah,
problem.
that reminds me of a line from Jay Pearson. So, shout out to the Lean Built podcast, and
Yeah.
he was down here last week, so he deserves a shout out. But there was one thing he said on one of his YouTube videos, and I'm going to botch the wording, but it was more or less, making parts efficiently and calmly is so much better than making parts fast. And, the gist of it was that if you make components, every day on a schedule, you do it with calmness. You come in with, standardization. You move things through the process, and the reality then is that it is faster to do things in this kind of standardized manner because your throughput is so much higher, and that focus on throughput is much better than focusing on fast.
It's spot on. I mean, you can optimize your cycle time on a CNC machine all you want, but if you're only running 10 parts of it, it's irrelevant in the grand scope of the business.
And even like kind of narrowed down to seeing our customers executing on some of our turnkeys. I mean, what's the mistake that people always make with grippers? They change the dwell times. They move the dwell times down because, maybe they can push the program and, until they break a tool or whatever, but that's kind of on them. Obviously, our scope is delivering good automation systems in the machine. But the thing I always see is that, the customers get greedy on cycle time. They want to save that 2 seconds. They move the dwell times down, and guess what? They crash a gripper, and then they're down for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, and then how much does a new gripper cost?
$1,500. Which in the scale of the products that they're making, usually it's like they're getting thousands of dollars of output per day. But still, it's like it was totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually it ends up being a rebuild, so it's not quite that bad. But it depends. Yeah.
Okay. No, makes a lot of sense to me. I like that strategy. I'd rather have more machines running efficiently in redundancy than one machine just cranking and always breaking down but never hitting a rate.
Yeah, I'm just that focus on throughput. And there's one thing too. I'm obviously a bit of a podcast junkie, but the Uriel and sorry, I forget the other guy's name. But I'm trying to remember. I'm really bad with names. But the incremental podcast, those guys. The one thing that they talked about for a long time that I've been super skeptical of is that like the master of all wastes is overproduction, right? That's always been something I'm like, is it? And it's something I've started only with having run a business for a long time to really kind of come around to of like, okay, I'm starting to see how many times producing 8 parts when we needed 6, or all these things have all these knock-on effects of like, oh, now you're burning through more end mills. Or your guy is standing there, or you're running too much inventory. And I'm still skeptical that it's like the root of all other wastes. But I've
that's an interesting one. I might be skeptical as well. Like, it might depend upon your business. Like, if you're strictly a product business, I could see that. For like service, it's so focused on labor utilization. But then you could say, is your overproduction technically being that you're getting outside the scope and you're solving things that aren't? So now I could say, okay, maybe that is the root. Like I could go in circles on that, which seems like we've definitely moved on to engineering and R&D, not sales and marketing at this point. So
yeah, a little bit. But I've been rambling. Do you want to go on R&D first?
We can. I don't have a whole lot to talk about. It's been we have the modular robot system Rev 2 that's coming out for our ProMat cart. Basically, we took that system and we shortened it up a little bit. It's going to be 6 inches shorter. The market's not wanting to stack pallets as tall as we wanted. They're wanting to be able to use more configurations on oddly short boxes, which is interesting. So by taking 6 inches off rather than saying you need to have a minimum of like a 10-inch box height or something like that, we're saying, all right, you can go down to 4, no problem. We'll do that. Cart got a little bit lighter then, a little bit easier to maneuver. We updated our software with that, which will be getting deployed. Whole thing will be coming together here in about 2 weeks and then testing right up to ProMat. So that's really it. Otherwise, we've got one big automation cell in testing right now, which is where we've got that case erection, palletization, and label application to the cases. That's all been functioning really nicely. We've got 2 minor tweaks that I'm aware of on that system. So it'd be like Rev 3B or C on a gripper and Rev 3B or C on the case erector, but then they're pretty much done. Like the details we're doing are making sure that, this customer is going to be running them for long times. So just making sure they don't have maintenance or warranty issues on that machine is really what we're focusing on. The last thing we want to do is have a call over that machine being down.
That's always the last thing, but sometimes it happens.
That sometimes that happens is the line you said there. Sometimes you get to get those things done. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, and I mean with all the custom stuff too. I mean, like even the a company as big as Haas or DN or whatever, sometimes stuff just breaks, and it is what it is. And especially these custom applications, it can be more likely to happen.
Yeah, it comes down to, though, we still have some 3D printed parts on there that shouldn't be 3D printed when they go to the customer. That's they function great for low speed verification testing, but when we start cranking the rates up and really hitting the volumes, they're just going to fatigue out and break. There's no question. So those things have to change.
Understood.
But what about yourself? That's pretty much it. We've got another machine that's about to go to testing, but we've been Loctiting bolts on that, so not a whole lot.
Well, for us, I think the biggest thing has been that we've been really gearing up for doing the first 1 to 3 installs of the Intraload. That we're trying to finalize. Like we have more customers who are interested in it than we're necessarily interested in putting it on in kind of the first beta run. We've taken it through I think 3 or 4 versions now. We really know what we like and what needs to still improve on our internal unit. But we're trying to target customers in Southern California that are within a 2 or 3 hour drive who understand, like, number one, this is a piece of feedback we've got. I mean, people are comparing the Intraload, which is a $40,000 product with vices, to a $200,000 Trinity without vices. And we're trying to get the customers who understand, this is not a $200,000 Trinity, which it is more surprising to me than I thought it would be, because I think the people who are really looking at automation are just so used to being in that place in the market. But regardless, I think that's kind of step one. And step two is, we have to find the right customers who trust us, who know like there's going to be little things that we need to tweak and that we'll fix them. And the goal on these isn't to make money, but really for us to deliver them a solid result. And so we've been trying to scope those customers out. Yeah. And with that, we've been just kind of swamped in Intraload demos. We got another one like right after this call.
How do you do the Intraload demos? Is that like a virtual call that you do on your floor? Do you actually take stuff to them?
We've been having customers flying out to us.
Interesting.
And they're paying for it on their own accord. I mean, there's enough interest that we've had, now 2 or 3 different customers fly out to our location to come, see it in person.
Like, how far are they flying from? Is it from New York, like all the way
haven't had any
across,
East Coast, and I think part of that is we wouldn't want those customers to fly out because they're too far.
Too much to maintain.
The top of the West Coast,
cool.
It is really cool. But the big thing that was kind of the final piece of the puzzle on the Intraload was getting the pallet scheduler to really work the way we wanted to, and man, that was a nightmare. And I can complain about it because I was the one dealing with it, because we're trying to get this into the right shops on a certain timeline. So, then we're back to falling to Michael doing actual R&D work. And, it was I did not understand that the Click Plus did not support TCP ASCII protocol directly, only Modbus. And now that became a converter, and I didn't understand just how bad the Haas protocol was to change variable numbers compared to literally every other one on the market. And that was kind of a rabbit hole for a week for me of just getting the stupid Click Plus to communicate.
Protocols are sometimes the bane of existence for software engineers
Yeah.
in integration.
But I got that working, which was incredibly frustrating. But what that meant was that the actual palette scheduler has all the functionality of a palette scheduler like just built in to the Haas or a Doosan or whatever control. So
Perfect.
literally you go and tell it, palette 91, it's 91 through 99 as standard, is program number 1003, and it's order number 2, and then after it runs the first part, it grabs the second part, or that correct palette, runs that correct program, and it's off and away. I'm still annoyed that you have to like upload it to the control in advance with Haas, but got to work around the limitations we have.
Yeah.
So that was a big piece of R&D. That was a pain. And I think some little tweaks to the machine's intro door, the little rubber auto door that we built from scratch. And yeah, I think that's mostly it for R&D. We have one project that we're debating taking on that's kind of intraload related.
Okay. Well, we'll stay tuned. I'm sure there will be more to come.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, it's a product that we wanted to put, the long story short, it's a kind of intraload setup that's more universal, that would kind of works with any machine. But it's closer. It's kind of halfway between what we have now, where it's all in machine, and something like a Trinity Cell or a RoboJob, where there's an actual robot. And we have one customer who's really interested in it. On the one hand, it could be a win-win where they're basically funding and buying the alpha. On the other hand, I'm kind of worried about throwing off the plan, and those are the projects in particular that you can very easily end up upside down on.
What kind of machine is it going on?
Just Haas UMC. They just want more pallets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But they basically then want it outside the machine so they can do it because you only have so much space that the spindle can reach.
Basically. So we're looking at basically building this rotisserie style of trays, but it's a whole can of worms, and there's all these questions of like, well, we're kind of getting out of this engineering consulting thing, but on the other hand, it's potentially a way that we can fund the project that has been.
Can you still fit it so the spindle can reach it?
Yeah.
I'll say, because rotaries are once you've been down that road and you know how to work with them, they're very nice pieces.
Well, it's a vertical chain rotary, because we.
Oh, I was envisioning like a jar turning.
Yeah, I mean we built
can
like an
turning,
Aroba style pallet changer robot for our like metal 3D printing system, and it's great, but the complexity is pretty high, and then we're not coming down much below what the market price point is already, which is kind of where we sit in the market, right? We're delivering something that I think is a value-oriented product, and we're doing that by leveraging the machine. So that's always the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, how much is the turnkey, you think? Like, how much is this going to cost the customer? Could they just go buy another UMC in another one of your systems? Like, automation is that expensive?
Well, I don't want to talk about too much about the customer and the details of a project that may or may not happen. And
I mean, that's a project that you guys would own IP
of course,
on. So
that's why I'm trying to talk about the project generally. But
that's what I'm saying. Could the cost of developing that for somebody, would it make more sense to just continue to stay in your lane of building it so it could be leveraged off the spindle, and then they just go buy another UMC and you sell 2 of these systems to them at maybe a price break because they buy 2?
Maybe. The thing is, the only reason really we would do it is that it extends the intraload offering to a 3-axis machine, right? And I don't want to get into the details until we really nailed down some of the patent work on how we would do that. But basically, we're still leveraging the spindle in some way in both of the applications, so we're not throwing a robot or some annoying interface in. So it's like it's this thing that's been on the product roadmap, but it was supposed to be Q3. That could potentially be okay, and end of Q1 start. But I expect to break even or lose money if we do pursue it, and it's just kind of a debate. Yeah.
Well, why don't you just you just talked about earlier in the podcast booking projects out, being diligent to that. Why don't you just have a candid conversation with that customer and say, hey, we wanted to do this in
Yep.
Q3. Could we just lock this project in for a Q3 start? We can be more competitive on time. You're going to get a better product. Does that work
Yep.
for you? Maybe it's just as simple as having that conversation with that end customer.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, Q3 in business terms is not that far
Yeah.
away. I mean, it's a quarter and a day at this point.
And I guess too, like I always try to not look at us in a vacuum, right? And I think especially coming from when we were doing, engineering consulting or what have you, we would always be a much longer timeline, a much more customized thing. And the thing I always have to think about is like if if we don't close one of these deals, realistically, the people who we're engaging with they're searching for automation, right? They're looking for a solution. And I have to look at it as, is that customer going to go buy a robo job? So I think maybe the thing I should be asking is not just having that kind of conversation. I agree with you. I definitely should do that, but I should probably look and see like what are our competitors delivering on in terms of timeline. I know Aroa is like 2 years out.
Yeah, most automation stuff is way further out than I think either of us probably even realize. If it takes a year to build a lot of custom machines, and if Aroa's, you said 2 years out, I mean,
But I know like
most people can't
AWR
get a
and a lot
PO
of
in
these other
3
companies
months.
aren't 2 years out. They're kind of the egregious,
Yeah.
Swiss one. But I guess I need to figure out how bad are they. And also, I'm a little bit worried about where the market is generally right now. I don't know if you have that feeling in terms of the manufacturing industry.
It's been a roller coaster of feelings around that for me, because I've got a lot of friends in the space, and some of them are saying, yeah, I'm super slow, Matt, and some are saying this has been the best month they've
Right.
ever seen in sales in their business. So like I've got both extremes, which tells me, all right, it's probably okay. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Comfort's the silent
Yeah.
killer, so I don't want to get
Yeah,
comfortable
that's the
either.
thing is, we just really mirror with these shorter term projects how many deals we're able to close, depending on how optimistic the broader, machining market is. And
Yeah.
I was actually very, very optimistic until the aluminum and steel tariffs kind of came to be a possibility or something that was likely. And of course, my concern, and I think what is most likely, is that there's always going to be a premium on domestic material, tariffs or not. They're just going to probably mark up aluminum and steel by the same delta, so there's still a 10% premium on it. Given
I think that that's going to be a long-term
Yeah.
positive for your business. Like short term, I think people are using that as a reason to pause because of
Right.
uncertainty. But I think that's going to be a long-term positive for both of us, all these tariffs.
All of them broader, yeah. I don't know. I agree on material. Because I think probably in terms of material, at least that's where my customers and your customers aren't really getting value add. We're getting value add when we turn, or our customers turn a chunk of aluminum into a $150 aerospace part. I guess aerospace is a bad example because that's already domestic material, but
I get what you're saying. Things that we've seen though is customers that were procuring those raw goods that were coming out of extruded bars, stuff like that. They're now saying, let's add the value
Right.
here. I don't know. There's uncertainty of being able to get products too. There's customer perception is a whole new topic of we better have a stack of beers.
Yeah, and I'm just really, I don't want to get political at all. But what I do care about a
don't.
ton is what are the broader implications on the market, and then how do I need to adjust my strategy as a business owner to make sure I set us up for success. And when you said like, hey, there's a whole bunch of mixed emotions that you're feeling, and some shops are succeeding and some aren't. I think that's probably the hard part that all of us in this position are navigating is like, what do we do? Should I be hiring? Should I be planning for growth? Or should I be, planning for a downturn in our specific industry? And I guess that's probably what's bothering me. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good question because I get, we have the Merlin advisors I work with. I've got some that are super pessimistic that'll be, you should be preparing for the worst. And then there's some that are like, Matt, this is just maintain the course. It's playing out. Like, and then there's some that just have no comment. Like, I don't know. And that's people that have been in business
Right.
for a long time. So they all made it somehow
Yeah.
successfully. I think I will say that the ones that were optimistic probably just continued to truck along at a more consistent rather than the people that were pessimistic maybe
Right.
in businesses. I don't know because I
Yeah,
think,
that's what I've been trying to do.
yeah,
Of just like because it's so uncertain, I'm just trying to act as if none of it's happening. But I also think that it's kind of just a background, question. Whereas I think before the tariffs, there our industry was more optimistic, especially the material ones. But I mean, we have to see how this plays out, I guess. And so,
I think so. I mean, the best offense to the situation is continue to hit
hmm
your marketing, continue to hit your sales, and if your conversion rate goes down, just make sure that you have more in the
yeah,
top of the funnel.
that's definitely a thing to focus on for us. And we loop back to
Like
marketing in
that's
the time honored map tradition.
there
Yeah.
we go. Yeah, I love my sales and marketing. We all know that
hmm
at this point. But we're on
Well,
engineering and
I,
R&D,
I
so
want
I'll
to
shut
loop
up.
back actually because I had a question I didn't ask. I think I
Oh yeah.
probed when we were in the marketing section a little bit about how much effort you were putting in, or your team was putting in, or the marketing agency, or what have you, into the drip campaigns. And one
hmm
thing that I'm trying to figure out is we I'll get like really optimistic about email marketing, and then I'll do week after week after week, and then a month later, now we're doing a month or 2 months between. I'm worried I'm falling into that trap I often fall into, where kind of perfect is the enemy of done. Um, and I'm kind of asking this question now, like, is this something that I should just be aggressively delegating, even if it's not necessarily up to what I think the quality standard should be, or is this something I should just be doing quickly and make sure it gets out the door somehow, or later? Are you doing this on a 1 week cadence, a 2 week cadence?
So we're doing a blend depending
Oh,
upon the service. Some of them are weekly depending upon where they're at in the pipeline. Some are as far as
right.
a month is all the frequency we're doing. Uh, I'm not writing any of the copy. I'm not doing any of the creative. Our agency is doing 100% of that. And we're doing, what are we going to be up to? Basically, 4 separate drip campaigns that they're doing within that. And that's costing me less than $1,000 a month.
Okay. Yeah.
So in my mind, I don't want to be doing that. They're then creating what happens is depending upon, we create star ratings based on
hmm
who the lead is. They go into our CRM, and then depending upon what type of star rating or what type of lead they are, that then automatically creates a task for
Right.
Matt or somebody within sales to accomplish. Call that person back, review this lead, make sure they're properly allocated, email
Right.
them
Yep.
personally because of their engagement that we saw, but they didn't reach out. If there's no engagement, just leave them in the drip campaign. They're going to get hit again next month. That's kind of the process we did. To the energy that took, I spend 1 hour a week with our agency to review
Right.
what we're doing for the next week. They handle a lot of stuff there. I probably then spend about another 2 to 4 hours reviewing things
hmm
throughout the week. And then from the calls that they created for me within the drip campaign, that resulted in 2 hours
Right.
worth of
Yeah.
work yesterday. And I engaged with about
Yeah.
40 people.
So I guess if I could wave my hand and have pay $1,000 a month and have all the copy done and have it all automated in HubSpot, obviously I would do that. Is that part of the broader package and process? Or yeah.
It's part of the broader package. And I think the thing I'm leaving out is we spent 3 months
Right.
building that up. So we spent probably $5,000 to $8,000 getting everything laid out, automated,
But total, not like per
optimized
month.
before we
Yeah.
started doing that.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, total. So now by the time we're rolling here over the year, we'll probably spend $15,000, maybe a little bit more for that drip campaign. And my energy's low. But if we
Yeah.
go back 3 months ago, like I said, all these things I wanted to be done by the time that, as Amanda and I are
hmm
calling Baby M, that's the internal name
Yeah.
that we have. But things that I wanted done, that was one of them. And I'm already seeing how much time that's freeing up for me, because I used to be, all right, I have to go through this list. I got to engage with all these people. And now I'm using HubSpot to automate that for me. I mean, we're automation
Right.
companies. Why can't we be
Right.
automating
Yep.
other things for us?
Yeah.
I don't know if that
No,
answers your
it
question
does,
or
and I
not.
think too I think I probably need to tone down the skepticism I have of marketing agencies and OSPs, and I think probably what I need to focus on is number one, getting rid of these kind of business undulations and making sure that I stay disciplined and consistent and can manage the team until we hit that level where we have a COO and everyone's at kind of discrete tasks, and
Yeah.
And I think if I can do that, I'll probably be a lot more optimistic on, OSPs and what you could otherwise call variable costs.
Yeah, and it always takes longer than we anticipate. A team
Yeah.
member here has the rule of pi, he likes
Yep.
to call it. I think we talked about that on the podcast. Everything takes 3.14 times longer than you anticipate it to. At the end of the day, it took us 2 years in marketing to get our website where it is. Like these are things and then our drip campaign to where it is today. These are things we've wanted done 2 years ago. It's like, oh, we can get this all done in like 3 to 6
Yep.
months. Here we are, 3.14 times later, and it's operational and running. I think that's the big thing, is just stepping back and being like, all right, let's scope this as a real project like we expect our customers to do for automation.
Yep.
And then let's execute this plan.
Yeah, and hearing myself and you talk about it, I think I'm starting to kind of open my eyes to how I'm like shooting myself in the foot a little bit. Because I'm, on the one hand talking about or complaining about these undulations, and I go through these stages of I think being, the crazy CTO, and then I turn to being kind of the disciplined COO, and I go back and forth in 2-week cycles. And I think that, a lot of that is what's causing these, the sine wave of my business. And then out of my other breath, I talk about how, I want to do this crazy R&D project that was scheduled for Q3 now. And I'm starting to think I need to say, yeah, to come to those things with more skepticism and more discipline, and, maybe lose out in the short term, but that comes with long-term stability and growth and planning.
Yeah, it's a tough decision to make, because we want it, and we want it now.
Yeah, and as you grow, you learn to say no more and more. And I think the hard part for me is that, when having kind of poured all my eggs into the automation, the Gimbal automation basket, as we kind of strategically fired off our customers in, inverse order of size from the water jet business, I think really what I was trying to do was, grow the automation business as fast as possible. And as a consequence, I, got a habit of saying yes to everything. And I think I'm now in that process of starting to say no, even when it's very squarely in the automation machine tending business.
I think that's standard progression of business. I mean, you're in survival mode is what happens when you go out on your own, you start a business. You're diving for dollars is the analogy that's used there. And then it comes to the point where it's what's the correct thing for the business and our target market, and growing within that space. But yeah, you have to dive for dollars. I don't think you did anything wrong there at the beginning. That's what you have to do to survive. I mean, feast or famine.
and I do, candidly still have this debate of like I really believe in the products and the things we're doing and the way we're delivering. But I'm still, I'll kind of go through these question marks of like, am I doing it the right way? In that, I'm bootstrapping the business. I'm, trying to get to a certain level of scale, and I swear every 2 months I keep coming back to, should I just, throw myself in kind of the CTO product guy role, raise capital and just fix the problems now and try to scale faster? And I still struggle to make that a firm decision either way.
Well, what do you want out of the business long term is probably the way you have to phrase that. Like, do you want to be in this business and scaling other businesses out of it? Do you want to eventually just sell Gimbal and use that pile of cash to throw on the next idea? Like, if the latter is the choice, I mean, I'd go to venture capital, and
that's the challenge.
Pump it like crazy.
I kind of know it's like I want to be like Gene Haas or Dean Kamen. Like I want to be the guy at the front of the ship. I want to run a product led business. I want a certain level of scale. And I think because I have that desire to hold on to it forever, I'm okay giving or selling a certain percentage of the business, but it really has to be. But also at the same time, trying to raise capital and saying, well, I'm never going to sell. Like maybe I'll buy it back from you, or you're going to get dividends. That makes those conversations harder, and I'm certainly not going to be dishonest about that.
Yeah, you shouldn't be. No, that's. I guess the other one then is, if you don't want to go out for venture capital, is like, you've talked about the lifestyle thing, stuff like that. There's a quote from I'm blanking. I really wish I could remember his quote. Have been perfect. It's an actor that likes to say, basically, if you can't change your lifestyle for the next year, you're trying to create the perception of what you want and the way people are looking at it. Like, is there things that you can change within your business so you can create that cash, or within your lifestyle? Like, I'm a huge miser on like how you just continue to put more capital in the
Right.
business. Now
Yep.
that results in me getting a low
Hmm.
salary, me not being able to do certain things now, but at the end of the day, it's where do I want to be in 10 years is kind of the question that motivates me around that. But
Yeah, no,
that's
I
a
think I'm doing
personal
all those
thing.
things, and it's not like I'm paying myself a crazy amount or living in a luxurious lifestyle. The kind of the things that I did kind of splurge on, like the airplane, I'm now turning those into capital strategically. um,
Yeah. So I
yeah,
think you're
yeah,
making those plays already. It's just
yeah,
not done
and,
yet.
and the and maybe this is I guess what I'm trying to parse is like, is this me being, too skeptical, and maybe having been, burned by maybe not the best investors or people around me when I was just starting out in the industry, or is this me not, just being impatient and wanting to jump to the result faster? And that's still the question I'm trying to answer.
Yeah. That's a fair one.
Yeah.
Partners are a tough conversation. Um, it's interesting because raising capital for a business like yours is far different than raising capital for a real
Hmm.
estate play. You can make a cap table for
Sure. Yeah.
those. You can build the process of, all right, you're going to get paid on dividends of X% because you can forecast those
Hmm.
numbers very easily. I mean, your numbers are, if we execute at standard growth, we're going to be here in the next couple of years. If we get this cash and things play the way I think it can because of the the total addressable market we can hit, we're going to
Right.
explode. And it's like trying to build out a dividend structure on that is far
Hmm.
more challenging.
And to be fair, these aren't really things that I've executed on. There are people in the industry where I've kind of floated this idea, and I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it, right? Which is something that I feel like I kind of need the stars to align, but I haven't really made the decision to really start trying to align them. So that, mhm.
Do you do you know what the number is you want to do that?
First I thought it was $1 million, and now I'm kind of like, well, if I'm gonna do it, it really should be like 2 or 3 million, and the goal would be to probably build out a team, get someone like really firmly in that COO role. Who candidly, like at our scale right now, I can't compensate that person the way they need to be for them to be effective and really run the ship as well as it needs to be run. Um,
Why can't you, Michael?
the
I bet you can.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think probably there's definitely a way to do it. It's just that I think I
If
need to be very consistent in that role, and kind of try to pull back from the CTO crazy R&D weeks, to get the capital and the consistency to bring that person in.
Yeah, I mean, you have multiple plays there. If you're willing to give up equity to outside investors to grow faster at the pace you want, is there somebody you want in operations that you know, and rather than pay them in cash, you pay them in long-term investment in the business called
Yeah,
equity?
well, yeah,
Like those are plays you can do, uh, and you can build your structure on that of the equity of non-voting
sure, yeah.
rights. Are getting. I mean, there's options that you
Yeah.
have there.
And I think the challenge is, at least what I'm looking at now, and feel free to call me out if you think I'm just making excuses and not making a decision. But at least I think where my skepticism has come from is, number one, I don't know that person. Like I would need to find that integrator in this hypothetical world. And I guess my concern from the investment front is like, I've been concerned that the investor that I would want as the person who wants to, hold on to the business as, their baby forever, like to me, like the business is like, Gene Haas's Formula One team. It is the thing I want to be doing. It's, there's not,
Yeah, that's
um, there's not some other goal.
that tells me you
Yeah.
shouldn't sell. That tells me you shouldn't
Right. And,
sell.
and that's the
I
challenge.
mean, I'm in the boat
Yeah.
that I don't want to go out and sell. I want to stick to our plan of what we're doing, and the reason that I promised to our team that what doesn't go to profit sharing is
Yeah.
all going back into
Well,
growing this
what I mean is
business.
that the investor who wants that, person who is in it, as a lifer, they are going to kind of want to give you a standard multiple of EBITDA, and then the investor who wants to give you, perhaps the valuation that I would require to actually be interested in this, probably, isn't interested in a leader who might not be interested in M&A long term, right? I think that's kind of where
Yeah.
I've landed, and the So I'm kind of seeing as a long-term thing. If I can make the stars align, awesome, and if not, we'll keep bootstrapping.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You've rattled around this
Yeah, I
question
know.
a couple of times. I think you'll get there. I'm happy to continue to
Mhm.
brainstorm with you. I don't know. I know I don't have one boot in the VC. It's 100%. Both boots are trucking ahead on
Mhm.
bootstrapped, and that's a strong decision I've made. But I definitely understand that side of the market. I mean, I just enjoy reading
Yeah.
about it and understanding what happens on that side, but that's not where
Yep.
develop's going.
So it's food for thought for me. I'll figure it out, but I'm not sure on what timeline I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that happens.
Well, we're
Well,
already like close to an hour. Do you want to feed us through the rest of the structure that we totally threw out the window this week?
The next is, what did you Google? For me, I've been hammering away on leads in HubSpot. So what I've been Googling is a bunch of websites
Mhm.
that are the leads that we're
Okay.
potentially working with to narrow in. So I like getting to understand who I'm calling if they're kind of towards that middle of the funnel and I'm engaging with them. It gets really personable,
Yep.
if you will. I like to know who these people are. Do I want to work with them? Or their hobby is, what's their business really about? Stuff like that. So it's been
Internet
creepy
stalking, yeah.
stalkerish on those business.
Market research. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this one's been more on the websites. I like to ask the questions while I'm in the call about them personally, but that's always part of my call. I just like knowing who I'm
Yeah.
working with. So that's what I've been Googling.
Yeah, mine has been, oh my God, PLC protocols, stupid converters. I can't tell you how many cables I bought trying to get this stupid protocol to work. And oh my God, if Haas could just put any amount of documentation out on their communication protocol, like any at all, that would have made my life.
Hey, you should make a video. You should make a video about that.
Well, what's kind of funny is that I realized the only people using this are like people who are doing like robot integrations or machine data collection companies, like Chatter or Predator or whatever, and all of us, and to be candid, me too, they want it to be hard for their competitors. Yeah,
that's true.
which is one of those perverse incentives that if Haas is listening, they should fix, but I'm not going to fix it. Yeah,
understood. Lastly is something personal, something you're doing this weekend, something the listeners should know a little bit about you.
My escape room, passion kind of continues. So probably going to try to get another escape room on the docket. And then I'm preparing to fly out next week to do an install. And then, see my family when I'm down in Denver. So that should be fun. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Personal for you?
I posed the question to my wife, Amanda, because I couldn't come up with something good to personal to share. Something that I don't talk about a lot that she actually said or gave as the list of something I should shout out to is MSOE.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to school, Milwaukee School of Engineering was where I actually got my formal education, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
All the real learnings happened since I've been out in the real world, if you will, engineering. But that's something I really never talk about, is where I went to school, and talk about that a whole lot. So she called it. She's like, I bet you haven't talked about this yet.
That actually reminds me that we did an escape room a couple of days ago that it took place in Wisconsin. And then the woman comes out with the spot on accent that was like so exaggerated. Yeah.
Was she carrying brats and cheese and maybe a case
the
of
whole
beer?
dress and everything? It was great.
So what was the theme of the escape room?
They're always
was it
ridiculous.
like Jeffrey Dahmer?
It was like a murder mystery.
Yeah. So which? I mean, we've got the record number of serial killers in this state. So which serial killer was it built on?
They never use like real names or whatever, and no.
Oh, they don't. Okay, I guess there's probably
and so many times there's like it's supposed to be Harry Potter, but they won't. They'll do everything, but they'll like change a letter here and there on what the spell or
Harry Plopper.
Yeah, where it's like you could still get a copyright infringement. You get a cease and desist for this still. I don't know if you're doing anything there, but they're trying at least. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.